All right, good evening, everybody. It is just a couple minutes after 6 p.m. This is Tuesday, May the 9th. It is our general regular Board of Alderman meeting for the month of May. That we do have all of our board members present tonight, and Mayor Pro Tem will be giving the invocation.
Please bow your head. Holy One, we ask your blessings on the people who have been called to lead and serve our community. Remind us it is our responsibility to serve the common good of all. Grant all of us the wisdom and courage to do what is right. May we all be guided by the spirit of community, justice, and love. This we pray in the name of all we hold sacred. Amen.
Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Board, you have before you your agenda for this evening, and I will ask, are there any additions or deletions requested? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move.
Motion by Mr. Muhammad.
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And our agenda is set for this evening. We will move to recognitions, and Mayor Pro Tem has quite a few student recognitions.
Good afternoon. This is the end of the year. School closes out this month, so as you know, at the end of the year, there's a lot of recognitions going around, and I did want to take a moment to recognize some of our students. I'm going to recognize the students of third quarter since I was not able to be at the last meeting. The first one is the North Rowan Elementary School, Ava Tyler, and her teachers wrote about Ava. She is a second grader, once was a very shy first grader. She has grown as a leader, not only academically, but also in helping others. Respectful to those with special needs and spends her break time helping them. Comes to school each day with a smile and prepared for the day. She has branched out and taken her art talent to the North Rowan Elementary School Art Club. We are proud of her work, and she does very well throughout the day. She is respectful, responsible, and safe at our school, and is a pleasure to talk to. An Ava smile or hug goes a long way. Okay, from the middle school, we have Rogelio Salinas, a great all-around student. Kind, courteous, appears an adult, driven to do his best and shows pride in his work. Always will lend a helping hand to anyone around him. The picture of what it means to be a good maverick. And finally, from the high school for third quarter student of the quarter, Zoe Rutherford. I admire her work ethic, her kindness, her willingness to stand up for and help others, her advocacy, her devout faith, her effort. She is a natural-born leader and does it without hurting others. Takes pride in hard work and doing the right thing. She cherishes friendship, family, and life. So I'd like for us to give these three students a round of applause. They have been recognized at their school. And I hope all of you noticed that this involves a lot more than academics, because they look for students that make a very positive impact on the school. I'm not saying good academics doesn't make a positive impact, but these kids also go beyond that and contribute to the school. And I also want to recognize the North Rowan High School graduating class of 2023, which will be graduating very shortly. In fact, they have their award ceremony tomorrow morning, and Mayor Williams and I will be attending. And I want to recognize the rising ninth graders that will be going to North Rowan High School from North Rowan Middle School. And finally, the rising sixth graders from both North Rowan Elementary and Hanford Dole. And I guess I need to say something about the students from Knox who are coming too. We want to welcome them because some of them will be coming to North Middle next year. Okay, and that is all.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Alderwoman Sledge.
If you haven't seen it, today Spencer again made the front page of the Salisbury Post, Faith, Freedom, and Family. And I want to recognize and say thank you to our librarian, Beverly McCraw, for another successful Saturday afternoon event. She's working with a very small budget, but she arranged for a program of musical variety. She gave the North Rowan High School drama students a chance to give us a preview of You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, which they will be presenting this weekend. And everyone enjoyed the event. It was lovely. There was a bluegrass group that was there. They were excellent. There was a instrumental jazz performer from here in Spencer, and his wife sang for us and performed. And there was a group who were a praise group who were there. A man, a woman, and another two guys and a woman. And then we had a hot dog guy there too, and he had redneck fries is one of his specialties. I was afraid to try that, but thank you to Ms. McCraw for having a wonderful event for the citizens of Spencer and for people outside of Spencer who were there. Secondly, I would like to recognize the members of the Community Appearance Committee, and especially Amy Ray and Anthony Nero, for the wonderful events that they've hosted this month, the Tea Party and then the Derby Party, which was held on April the 30th. The food was great, the beverages were flowing, and there was an array of lovely fun hats on both ladies and dapper gentlemen who showed up.
Dapper. Dapper. How about that?
Dapper.
I wouldn't have used dapper.
Dapper.
That's made dapper.
Together, those two events raised $1,970, $1,100 at the Tea Party and another $870 at the Derby Party. It was a lot of fun. There were people from both locally here and one lady who was from Albemarle who had heard about the event and came back. And so it was a fun afternoon, and I wanted to say thank you to the two of them and all the people on the committee for all the hard work that they do to make it successful. I will say something next month because they're not here this week, but about the senior event that was held last week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We will move to our public comment. We do have two individuals signed up for public comment this evening. As a reminder, you are limited to 3 minutes. We will have a timer. And if you will, when you come to up to the podium, please state your name for the record, and we'll invite Mr. Witkowski to come up.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman, my name's Tim Witkowski. I live at 400 Steeple Chase Trail. I'm currently vice chair of the planning board, and the reason why I'm here is we had a meeting last night, and that's going to come up on your agenda. I think it's number 10 on your agenda as far as the membership text amendment. We discussed that last night, and I tell you, back in the 90s, I was on the planning board for 7 years, and I can't remember us ever having 7 full members on the planning board. It's really hard to get the ETJ seats filled. I know one guy years ago told me, said, I'd like to be on the ETJ seat, but I'm afraid if I start showing up there, they're going to annex me. Like, you know, that's there you go.
Logical.
But anyway, it's Steve has brought this issue up, and I realize, and the rest of the planning board, we all agree that this is another way of filling these 7 seats. Right now, we have 4 seats. I made a phone call today. They haven't returned the call, but I think I have an individual that lives in Spencer that would be interested in filling the 5th seat in the city. The ETJ's seats are going to be challenging. But this amendment that Steve has put together is going to give us the opportunity to do that. The planning board feels that we all agree that we shouldn't let these members sit on the Spencer Planning Board outside of the ETJ or the Spencer city limits. We feel like they should have a stake in this town and not live in Salisbury and have a seat here, or live in East Spencer and have a seat on the board, or I'm not for sure where else, the China Grove. We need to keep them within our ETJ and our Spencer city limits. So you have a couple. We recommended approving this text amendment with modifications. And the way Steve held our hand last night through this thing is, and he'll explain on when item 10 comes up, but once you approve it with the modifications, we will be able to fill those 5 seats with Spencer residents. But if we can find a 6th person or 7th person, that's and we do due diligence and try to look for somebody in the ETJ and we can't find them, we could bring the 6th and 7th seat on within the Spencer city limits. And that's what we, as a planning board, are shooting for. And we appreciate you guys looking into this, and we hope that you'll consider the modification portion of it where we'll be able to keep it within the town.
Thank you, Mr. Rakowski.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, Mr. Mosher.
Good evening, Mayor, distinguished board members. Jim Mosier, 121 5th Street, Spencer. Been here for 32 years operating the recording studio. In the last 7 years, my wife and I operating the music school. We have 100 students a week that come in and out of this town, mostly from affluent neighborhoods coming into Spencer. This is the 3rd shooting in less than 90 days. And now it happened in front of my building. Patrick's wife, who's Rosalie, who's a judge in Charlotte, her car shot up, which is 25 feet away from my window. This is the 2nd time in less than 60 days I've had to run downstairs and take students and put them in the back room and lock the door while my front desk girl's in panic. The last shooting, one of our teachers is walking from his home. The whole reason he moved to Spencer, beautiful small town, I could walk to work, and the shooting happened 20 feet in front of him. I spent the rest of the day counseling him. He just broke into tears. He'd never experienced anything like that in his life. I know all you guys live here in Spencer, but you don't live on 5th Street. I hear this crap all night long. Foul rap music playing all night long. The police station is right across the street from me. We're doing something wrong here, even though you guys are doing a great job. And I'm blown away and impressed with all of you and the great things we got going on. But if the people aren't afraid of the police station and they're shooting in broad daylight, there's something missing. And we got to do it. We can't have this 3 strikes and you're out when it comes to a shooting. If there's a shooting, those people got to be out in the street. They need to be arrested. We got to crack down on the landlords, pinch them financially, whatever we got to do. I can't deal with this anymore. I mean, I'm still shaking from it. It literally sounded like I was upstairs getting ready to come down. It sounded like they walked in my building and fired 5 shots and killed my front desk girl. But it was only 15 feet outside my door. Casing strung from the church almost all the way up to Roger Dogs. This is a major issue. Peter tells me we're doing all we can do. You know, I come from a family of law enforcement. I'm sitting there going, I'd have a cop car out there 24/7 until those people are gone, because this crap's going to keep happening. You know, like I said, unless you live right there and experience it, it sounds like a bad thing. No one likes a shooting. Oh, it's horrible. But most of you guys are on the perimeters of this block. We got 3 houses that, you know, we approved on the board to be built, and they're sold. $300,000 homes. Whoever thought that would happen in Spencer? We're at a critical time here where COVID actually helped us out because no one could afford to build houses, so they're coming to Spencer. All the millennials, they want a small yard, they want to fix up a house, etc. We got to do something. Thank you.
Mr. Merchant.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, that is it for public comment this evening. We'll move to our consent agenda. And you have several items on your consent agenda: approval of minutes from our previous April meetings, several property liens for consideration, and then an ordinance for adoption. Is there any discussion on consent agenda items? Any reason to pull any consent agenda items? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve them as stated.
All right, it's a motion by Mr. Howell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? And the consent agenda is approved unanimously. All right, the next item is to consider adopting Resolution 23-11 for naming the Spencer Town Hall Boardroom the Hilda B. Palmer Boardroom. Mr. Franzese.
Well, thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is an item that was requested by the board. And for those who don't know, Hilda Palmer was a trailblazing local government servant and one of the, if not the first woman to be a city or town manager in North Carolina, and she served in that role here for nearly 30 years. And we have some artifacts from her family that have been shared with us, such as this 1973 article, I believe, and then another article from 1990 upon her retirement. But what this resolution would do would acknowledge her service and her contributions to the town of Spencer, and formally name this room we're in the Hilda B. Palmer Boardroom. And then we would follow up likely towards the end of the summer, maybe August or so, with some sort of event to recognize that. And we would also work on getting some signage changed for the room and also some artwork in the back to tell the story about who she was. So happy to answer any questions and certainly appreciate the assistance so far from some of the board members in that, as well as working with Anna. And we had the opportunity to meet with Hilda Palmer's daughter, Deborah Crook, and she's the one that provided these. But we'll look forward to continuing getting that all set up for in a few months should you adopt this resolution.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Franzese. Any questions for Mr. Franzese? All right, hearing none, I do think it is fitting that we read the ordinance or the resolution this evening because it does provide some really good insight into Mrs. Palmer and her career here in Spencer. Mayor Pro Tem, would you be willing to read that for us?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Whereas Hilda Bass Palmer was born March the 6th, 1925 in Rowan County and graduated from Boyden High School in 1942, and whereas Mrs. Palmer was employed by the town of Spencer from 1963 to 1990, and whereas Mrs. Palmer served as town manager from 1967 to 1990, dedicating much of her time and energy to the town after raising her children, Deb and Chip, with her husband, T-Bone, and whereas Mrs. Palmer was the first female town administrator or manager in Rowan County and most likely in all of North Carolina, and whereas Mrs. Palmer was one of the earliest women to attend the UNC Institute of Government in order to hone her skills and was later invited to be on an institute panel, and whereas Mrs. Palmer performed a variety of duties from handling the town budget to checking on broken water lines in the middle of the night, and whereas Mrs. Palmer passed away on August the 19th, 2010, and her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren have remained connected to Spencer because of the Palmer family legacy of community service, along with deep friendships with many town residents. And whereas the naming of a facility is an appropriate recognition for such a distinguished public servant and trailblazer in her profession, And whereas the completion of the Spencer Town Hall and Police Department is a significant enhancement to the facilities of the town that builds upon the foundation laid by Mrs. Palmer, her staff, and her elected officials she served. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the town of Spencer, North Carolina, that the Spencer Town Boardroom shall henceforth be named the Hilda B. Palmer Boardroom. Be it further resolved that an appropriate ceremony be held to mark the naming of the Hilda B. Palmer Boardroom, adopted this ninth day of May 2023.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right. With that, is there a motion to adopt Resolution 23-11?
So moved.
There's a motion by Mr. Morgan. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Sledge. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you all very much. All right. Next item on our agenda is a presentation from the town manager for the recommended fiscal year 2024 budget. Mr. Francis?
Well, thank you once again, Mayor and members of the board, and I will ask John Softly to come forward so he can chime in as needed, but we certainly appreciate the opportunity to provide our budget recommendation to you for the coming fiscal year. As you'll recall, we've had a few opportunities to start thinking about this together over the last few months. We had our annual planning session in March, and we had in April a pre-recommendation workshop opportunity where we discussed the revaluation process and impact of that on tax rates and revenues and such. And the board provided some helpful feedback to us as it relates to the budget process. And so therefore that brings us to tonight, where we are going to share the recommendation for the budget next year. And with that, I'll ask John to jump in on the revenue side and where we're looking in terms of all the data that's coming our way, looking at the next year.
Mayor, fellow board members, that meeting we had where we went over and reviewed what the assessed value was that we received from the county and the impacts on the median income. The feedback which we received was extremely helpful for the board to identify that you would like us to use a target rate of 55 cents. Knowing that up front actually made our lives much easier, because then we know a number we're working with on tax valuation. So the 55 cents is a tax rate that we went with and has built in. Now, one of the great things this past year, couple of years, is we've talked about the increases in sales tax that we've got. In fact, we've actually brought a couple of amendments to the board this year to increase sales tax to pay for some one-time expenses several times. Well, from last year to this year, the state League of Municipalities has projected that we'll have 11% increase from where we were last year. On top of that, when we look forward to what we're going to do next year, when I'm talking about 11%, that's through June 30th this year. They're projecting overall throughout the state that they're projecting a 6.5% more increase. Now, one of the things they provided us was a heat map that showed across the state where sales tax was higher than normal and lower than normal. And if it was higher, it was black, where Rowan County was black. So rather than go with 6.5, we bumped it a little bit up to 6.8 to reflect that Rowan County experiencing higher collections and growth than other counties surrounding us. So with that significantly is an increase over sales tax from what we had budgeted last year, for a total of $1.25 million. Again, that's significantly different than what we budgeted last year to begin the year of $1,077,000. So that's great. Utility franchise tax, that's another big item that we have. It's is going to move up to about 200,000. That's up about 5,000 from this year. If I take a look at my other revenues, our solid waste collection to date has been very steady. We haven't had a lot of new homes built in town, so that number hasn't gone up. And for the moment, we're looking at remaining steady as we move to next year. Now, one of the big items that has moved up, and one I've already mentioned to you, is interest income. We're projecting currently 120,000, and actually that number may be a little higher. I think it's probably going to be, since the Federal Reserve increased their discount rate by 0.25% this past meeting, and that then flows throughout the market and relates in higher interest rates. Last year, from ARPA, we had 586,000 included in the budget. This year, according to the plan, and this is a plan that we laid out last year of how we're going to utilize those funds to supplant salaries, so those funds could be used elsewhere in the budget, is almost 227,000. So that's down significantly, but yet that's still being put into existing projects. And one thing that's not shown here is that we had several items that this year, like 17th Street Extension and the fire department design, we had substantial sums of funds for each of those projects that we did not spend all of those. So the remaining funds from those projects are going to be reprogrammed into the current year's budget. But since we already have received those as revenue, they'll be part of the fund balance appropriation. And that's some 80,000 additional dollars there. So, and finally, one item that is a big item on here on page 27 under federal grants just for miscellaneous revenues is 414,588. Within this budget, we have 6 new firefighters, and that's an estimated SAFER grant to pay for those firefighters. Now, we budgeted this as if that we have all 6 firefighters all year long, and salaries and all fringes are scheduled to be paid through that grant. Peter will talk a little bit more about that, and then there's some additional expenditures related to startup costs for those, and that's also included in the budget. Unfortunately, the SAFER grant will only pay for salary and fringes. So we felt it was important that you actually could see what the cost of that would be for a full year, and not 8 months or 9 months or 6 months, but a full year. So, and then we have a total of between fund balance to operate the general fund and capital reserve, 565,000. Again, of those, 80-some thousand of that is ARPA funds that we're carrying forward this year. Overall, we've got a strong revenue base. Our revenues are up for those revenues that are dynamic and flexible. So I feel good as far as where we started at, and it allowed us to put together a budget that I believe meets the desires of this board. Peter?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go over an overall look at the budget and some of the details and some of our focus areas. And I'm to start with, as John mentioned, we've had strong growth in our revenues, but we're also making sure we are being conservative in our projections. And so we approach this actually hoping that things will come in better than we're expecting, or we try to design the budget in a way where if they don't come in as good as what we've been told, we've already accounted for that, in other words. But this budget continues the trends that we've had over the last several years of significant investments in our staff, in our equipment, in our facilities, in our services we're providing to the public. We have several new public safety positions accommodated in this proposal, as we've talked about, and I'll get into some more details about that. We're also wanting to continue to be aggressive in rewarding our staff for doing excellent work, and as it relates to the continuance of our developmental increase program. And we're accommodating the additional debt service that we are anticipating with the purchase of our garbage truck, and even though we don't expect it in the coming fiscal year, it will come in the following year, the debt service on the garbage truck. But we do have some one-time expenses that same amount of the debt service is going to be able to cover in this coming year. So I'm going to skip ahead to start on actually on page 9 and talk a little bit about our ARPA supplanted funds and how things have changed over. Well, actually, let me back up for a minute. One thing I want to make sure is that we do talk about the tax rate, the 55 cents. We talked about that last time. As this is a revaluation year, we also need to provide the revenue neutral calculation, and it is as we anticipated it would be, where the revenue neutral rate is coming in at around 48 cents. But of course, that does not provide the growth in the town's budget needed to provide the enhanced level of services that we're looking to provide. And so that's why we're recommending the 55-cent rate. And in terms of the impacts of that, our rate is currently at about 65.5 cents per $100 of value. And as we talked about last time, our median home price has changed over the last 4 years. And so when you look about how that will impact that median property owner, from 4 years ago, their tax bill at the current rate of 65.5 cents was about $763 per year. When you apply that to the vehicles, on average of about 2 vehicles, that's looking at about $127. So that's a full tax payment to the town of about $890. At our recommended rate of 55 cents, that with that increase in the median home price, the tax bill for the property goes from $763 to $900, but the vehicle tax decreases, of course, because you're decreasing the rate on the somewhat stable vehicle value to $107. So we see the net impact on both of those to be an overall increase of about $117 per year, and that's what, just for a frame of reference, the median homeowner, their tax bill would have a net increase of about $117 per year. That's a little over $9 a month or so. That for the cost of a fast food combo meal, we're going to provide enhanced public safety staffing and equipment and such for the coming year. So I want to make sure there weren't any questions about that calculation and impacts that we were projecting. Okay, so looking through our ARPA supplanted funds project list, we revised this list. It should look familiar, but what we've done is we've shown what our original plan was from this time last year, how things have come in over the year, and we're showing where we're having some reallocated funds that were made available and how we're adjusting some of these projects. You'll recall a few weeks back we had a meeting that we were able to use some of those reallocated funds to purchase some vehicles for police and fire, but we're also going to use some of those funds to program into the budget next year. One of the things that was identified as a priority is some funds to help purchase some strategic properties in town as we are able to determine them. We're also going to increase our match for the town park project. We have our PARTA grant application out there for the town park, and we have now, between our successful $900,000 rural transformation grant for that project, and this town contribution using ARPA's planned funds of $225,000. If we're successful with our part of grant, another $500,000 will be well on our way towards our town park project. And then the future year project at the bottom of the list is still there, a down payment on the fire truck that's on order, and that has not changed. And to go into some of the highlights for our staff and how we're compensating our team members, we have, as you're familiar, our developmental increase program, and that's a program where as staff are progressing through the pay range, starting at minimum and going through target, which is about a 25% difference from minimum to target. Our developmental increase program splits that into 7 increments. And so you, by the way the program is designed, you have a flat increase each time you progress. It's not based on a percentage. And what so ideally you would over 7 years or so progress to your target pay range. And what we're proposing for the coming year is we actually do a double developmental increase for the coming year. And we believe that will help us stay competitive in the market compared to what we're hearing based on some of the survey data that's come back about what other municipalities are doing. Our developmental increase program is unusual. A lot of folks will do a cost of living adjustment and or a merit adjustment. So we're recommending with our double DI for the coming year, an example where somebody might typically get about a $1,200 increase for the year, that will be doubled at about $2,500. And we also have a way to prorate that for staff within their first year. But the other thing that is happening as we've now gotten several years into our new pay plan is we are having some staff that are getting close to approaching the target pay, and that means the developmental increase program doesn't apply to them, and we need to have something else to reward their efforts. And so I am recommending a merit performance increase for those staff who are already at or above their target pay, so that based on their performance evaluation, they would be eligible for an either 5 or 6% increase based on their rating. And of course, with that and the developmental increase, it is all based on their performance evaluation. If somebody were to have an unsatisfactory evaluation, they would not qualify for either of those programs. We are recommending a continuance of our holiday bonus program, which is a flat payment lump sum, and we're recommending $1,000 for full-timers and $500 for our eligible part-time staff and volunteers. We have all that laid out in our personnel policy handbook. That's a small adjustment from the current year where it was at $800 and $400. And of course, we want to continue our outstanding benefits we offer to our staff. That includes fully town paid coverage for health and dental and vision insurance for the staff member, and very reasonable premium sharing program if they have dependents added on. Any questions about any of that part? Okay. Another few adjustments I want to mention personnel-wise. You've heard from John about our firefighters and our SAFER grant. So we have programmed those in at the 6 positions. If we are unsuccessful in the grant, which we feel like we submitted a very strong application this year, we made good improvements from the application we submitted a year ago. But if it were to be that we were unsuccessful once again, we would at that time assess our budget trends and come back to you with a plan of whether we would find a way to fund a smaller number of positions, or whether if we were not able to do that, we would need to revert back to the current part-time staffing model, which is not ideal. but that's how we're handling that at this time in the budget. For police, we're also recommending 2 positions for what we're calling an active criminal enforcement or ACE team. The board has prioritized this for us to be more proactive in our community safety and policing, and this would fund the positions for 2 additional sworn law enforcement officers that would allow them to have proactive safety projects, targeted enforcement, and enhanced community outreach. These staff members would have flexibility in their work schedules and locations to be able to address any issues that require more time than our patrol officers can dedicate. The team would also assist with criminal investigations, responding to hotspots where criminal activity is reported, and things like speed reduction efforts. We also want to continue our work that we've done over the last few years to help grow the next generation of public service leaders. We've been a host site for the Lead for North Carolina Fellowship Program for the last few years, and we were selected to do this again for a 3rd year. And even though our fellow Sky is going to be moving on to graduate school, we're going to be going through the process in the next month or so to identify a new fellow to come work with us starting in August. We are also including in this budget a recommendation to add a graduate student internship so that we can continue some of our work in the area of our public art programs that's been developed over the last few years. Any questions about that? Okay. And I know it's a lot right now, and the one thing I'll say process-wise is we're going to let you digest this, and we'll have an opportunity over the next month or so to work through it and have public hearings in June and go from there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that process. But if there's no questions at this time, I fully recognize there may be questions later. So a few key recommendations in our general fund. And I'm not going to list all the ones that we've got in our document, but some highlights that I'd like to mention. We're including a 2nd year of our seed funding for our entrepreneurship program with the Rowan Idea Center. We're excited about where that's heading, and of course that's part of our ARPA supplanted funds, so we have those programmed in. There is going to be a municipal election in the coming year, and so we're programming the necessary fees that the county would charge us to run that election for us. We are planning a full legal review and recodification of our town code of ordinances that at the end of the process we'll have an updated online hosting platform and also a supplement service. But that's an exciting project and one that's really needed to make sure not only have we cleaned up the things in our code that from a process wise, you know, different issues that we've identified, but also just a legal review to make sure that our code is still in compliance with the latest statutes. We are working on and proposing an increased frequency of our town newsletter and some additional funding into that process, as well as a small amount of funds towards some social media marketing. We are also proposing a $50,000 amount to put towards a comprehensive sign enhancement package at various town facilities, whether it be the library, our parks, perhaps some funding to complement what is happening through the county's overall wayfinding, but also the proposed electronic message sign that we've described here at Town Hall. That's included in this recommendation. We have in there on our police department, there's a small amount that's been programmed in to add some security cameras at our Steinbach Forest, and as well as in our fire department, continuing our outreach with public education and enhancing that. And then looking at public works, there's some funding that we're planning to replace some equipment like chainsaws, some hand tools, a variety of those types of equipment that need replacement. Also something called a steam jenny, which maybe you're familiar with, but that was something in the list that I had not seen before. Steam jenny. Joel can tell you all about it. We are looking to implement in this budget next fiscal year our enhanced and improved, as I like to call it, solid waste collection featuring the automated side loader. We've started the process of an outreach campaign that we're going to be continuing this summer, and we plan to continue some of those efforts as well into the fiscal year as we make that transition. One thing I want to mention, it's not programmed through this budget, but we have about $2 million worth of stormwater improvements that will take place on 17th Street that we received grant funding for from the state. That will be programmed through a special project fund as we track the grant funding. But that's a very big undertaking that we're looking forward to as well. And then our library, we've increased the programming budget for what's happening at the library, and look forward to further coordinating in those efforts as well. So those are some of the general fund highlights. Any questions about that? Okay. And just to mention our other funds, our Powell Bill Fund, of course, that's where we get revenue from when you buy gasoline, and it goes to the state and makes its way back to us. We're anticipating a slight increase in the Powell Bill revenues next year. We have some funding that we're anticipating out of the Powell Bill to cover some needed stormwater improvements. And we have also some funding that we are anticipating for resurfacing, but we are approaching that funding to hopefully complement what we have in place for this fiscal year, so that we've put our resurfacing program out to bid. The bids will be due in June, and so depending on how those bids come back in, we may be able to have two years worth of funding to take care of all of that, or if the bids come in very favorably, we'd be able to do another bid process later in the fiscal year. But that's how we're approaching that. There's a small amount of fund balance in the Powell Bill that we were programming in, but not as much as we've put in for the current year. And then our Capital Reserve and Replacement Fund, that's the new fund that we've established that over time we want to build to help us pay for things with cash. We've got some funds that we're dedicating, and when we have things that come through the budget like computer replacements, vehicles and things with an extended life, we are programming those through this fund rather than through the general fund, so that it can over time be a self-sustaining process. And ideally the way we'll build that in the future is, say we purchase a vehicle, a department general fund budget, over the course of 5 or 10 years can pay into the capital replacement fund, so that when the time comes to replace that vehicle, we've got the cash set aside for it in that way. So that we hope that fund over the coming 5-10 years is able to grow through that method as we start the program really in both places, general fund contributions to it on an ongoing basis, as well as then spending down the cash we've built up. What we're seeing this year is more using cash that we already have on hand, if that makes sense. Okay, so all in all, our general fund budget for the recommended general fund budget for the next fiscal year is at about $5.4 million. When you add in the other Powell Bill funds and capital replacement and reserve fund, that takes it to about $5.8 million for the next fiscal year. Again, that does not include some of our special capital project funds, like for the town park and for 17th Street. but it does include some general fund contributions towards those things. So the full scope of what funding we're dealing with, that's more evident when you look at our financial reports at year end. But all in all, we're very pleased as to provide this recommendation to you. I have to certainly thank all the staff members that contributed to it. This did not happen by itself. It happened because we had a great team working together to submit requests and work together to identify the needs and match them up with what you've established as priorities. And we hope that you feel this recommendation is responsive to that. Process-wise, again, this recommendation tonight is yours to consider. And what we'll do is schedule a public hearing at the June pre-agenda meeting. And then at any point after that time, you would be free to adopt a budget between then and the end of June. And if you feel the need for additional workshop opportunities to talk about this, we could certainly set those up either at something like a special meeting in the next week or so, or using your June regular meeting for a workshop and following up with a separate special meeting for adoption after that. But again, really appreciate our staff's efforts to put this together, and in particular working with John on the budget and all the rest of our staff as well.
All right. Well, I'll say on behalf of the board, thank you, everyone, Peter and John, for your work, and then our staff's work as well. I know it's been a labor of love to get it to this point. Appreciate you getting it to us in such a timely fashion to be able to consider it and consider it next month as well. So I'll open it up to the board. Are there any questions at this point, or any directions for staff over the course of the next month prior to considering this in June?
I have two questions. One, I'm sure it's only I'm just not seeing it. With the forgive me, what is it called? The it used to be a different name. The parade.
Yes.
The spectacular. Are we still sponsoring in that? I don't see it in here, but we did last year, right?
We had a float last year.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that was covered under special events.
Yes, so we have some general funding available within the events
Okay.
account that
Okay.
would typically cover that.
Okay. I'm just curious, given the events of last year, and of course, anyone has a need of the town, maybe now would be the time to come talk to us about it rather than September. But that might be something worth looking at, just to make sure we don't have a reprisal of last year. And that's just, I'm just spitballing. And the other question, and I know we talked about it briefly at the last meeting, but I personally am curious about what we can do, especially given the tax increase, what we can do to provide some type of grant-like funding or something for our local schools here within Spencer to do things that maybe they might not otherwise be able to do. And I'm not saying how much that should be or what it should be, but I'm just curious about that we could talk about that for the next few weeks.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Very good. So do we need to officially set the hearing for next month?
No, we are able to advertise that on your behalf.
Okay. Very good. Well, thanks again for all your effort, and appreciate you taking the time to go through it tonight with us.
Sir.
All right. The next item is to consider adopting ordinance 23-11 for, I don't think that number is right. 23-12? No, I'm sorry, that is right. That was a resolution. Ordinance 23-11 for ETJ board membership text amendment. Mr. Blunt.
That is an interesting coincidence that the resolution and the ordinance have the same number.
Okay, so
Uh,
this
As you heard at your pre-agenda meeting and have heard in the past, we have difficulty finding members to serve in the ETJ positions on the planning board / board of adjustment. And we learned from a previous staff member that in a town where she worked, they had actually checked the statutes and run it through the approval process to allow the town to recommend people who don't live in the ETJ to serve in those positions when you've made a good faith effort to find people in the ETJ. The good faith effort that we have made, in addition to normal advertising and putting on the website and other things, is that we sent out a direct mailing to as many of the residential structures in the ETJ we could find, something over 200 direct mailers, to which we had 0 responses of anybody interested in serving on these boards. So the draft that is in your package basically says that upon not finding someone in the ETJ, the board could accept applications from people living elsewhere, outside the ETJ, anywhere in Rowan County, and in this town of Spencer, within the city limits of Spencer, to fill those 2 positions. And then the staff would review the applications, planning board would review the person and the application. You would review the person and the application and then recommend it to the county commissioners for approval to fill the slots. At the planning board meeting last night, when the planning board reviewed this ordinance, they expressed a concern that they really felt the 2 positions should be filled by either someone that actually lives in the ETJ or someone that lives within the town limits of Spencer. So what I've handed out to you after the fact is a slight revision that reflects that position that the planning board put out last night. So that the 2 are slightly different in that one allows you to recommend people from anywhere in Rowan County, including the city limits, the town limits of Spencer. The other one restricts it to just the town limits of Spencer. There are pluses and minuses for either approach. And I sent you an email earlier today explaining the unintended consequences of adopting an ordinance that ties your hands to just the town limits, is that there may be some very qualified people right on the periphery of our ETJ or either other places in the county that really would make great planning board members that understand the issues of Spencer and care deeply about Spencer. I don't know if he's here tonight. Yeah. I'll use Joe Morris as a great example, who lives out off of 601. I can't think of anybody who would make a better member of the planning board. But if you tied your hands with the revised ordinance that was suggested by the planning board, Joe could not serve. You couldn't even consider him. So the planning board has valid concerns about making sure that the person that gets appointed cares about Spencer and understands the problems that you face. That's what the selection process is for in my mind. You go through the selection process to interview the person, to review the application form, and if that person is, I think in my email I said if they're from China Grove and don't know anything about Spencer, they're going to get weeded out during the application process. I'm comfortable with either approach. So either way that you feel comfortable going, I'm happy with. We just want to fill those 2 seats so we have a full board to work with. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, are there questions?
Yeah, so can explain if let's say that hypothetical, someone from China Grove, I would personally never vote or for that at all.
Sorry, Joe, don't move to China Grove.
Sorry. But let's say, for example, that were to happen. It were to come to us through the planning board. I'm assuming we're a recommending body at that point to the county commissioners. Is that?
It's an interesting point that while you, because of your current development ordinance that establishes the planning board, doesn't allow you to select people anywhere except those that live in the ETJ, the county commissioners are not so restrained. So let's say you found some great people in the ETJ that you wanted to fill those 2 seats, and you sent those recommendations to the county commissioners. They could pick that guy from China Grove and appoint him to your planning board. So I think, and Jay's probably biting his tongue at this point, I think they have the authority, if we can't find qualified people in the ETJ, to appoint anybody they want to serve in those two positions. But in the past, they have respected your recommendations. So when you send somebody to them as a recommended member for the planning board, in my experience, that's always who they have approved to serve on your planning board. They don't want to step on your toes. So I've gone the long way around telling you that the weeding out process that is the application, is the review by planning board, is the review by you, is the way to make sure that that person in China Grove doesn't get in front of the county commissioners for approval.
Would you say, I mean, I know what I think, but I'm curious what you think. Two purposes of an ETJ are, number one, so that you have some level of consistency transitioning from urban or city dwelling to more county or rural or suburban nature, and it's not drastic. You don't literally flip a switch and you're going from living in a city to rural. And number two, often those people in the ETJ at some point may become annexed citizens with their permission, and we want consistency in zoning. Right? That's my. I mean, do you agree with that or disagree with that?
Back in the 70s, when ETJs were established by the state legislature, involuntary annexation was allowed, and towns were growing fairly rapidly in some places. It was thought that if a town was going to grow into a geographic area outside of their existing municipal limits, you wanted to grow into an area that had been patterned after your own growth standards as far as zoning and subdivision and land use planning. So the ETJs allowed that process to take place. For towns, small towns, it was a 1 mile limit. And if you look at some of the strange lines on the map, that's exactly how it got drawn, 1 mile out. The fact that involuntary annexation is gone now doesn't change the fact that that's primarily where we're growing. We're still growing into the ETJs. When ETJs were established, they were mostly rural farmland around existing municipalities. Now they're suburbs, quite honestly. For the most part, ETJs have turned into suburbs, including Spencer's. So it's a way to prepare those areas to become a part of your municipal limits so that the development quality in those areas is the same as the development quality in your existing city. As I told you at one meeting not too long ago, there's a bill in front of the state legislature to do away with ETJ. And it primarily has to do with the very simple fact that the folks that live in the ETJ don't feel like they're being represented. And yet here we are with the problem that we can't get them to serve. So that again is why I would say, at least personal opinion, and I'm not stuck with this, but a person who lives slightly outside the ETJ would be a better representative of the issues that those folks face that live in the ETJ than a person that lives certainly in China Grove, but even a person that lives in downtown Spencer probably doesn't have a great feel for the concerns of the folks that live in the ETJ, where the town is growing into. When I tell y'all we need to have higher density residential development on the other side of Grants Creek, it just sounds like a good planning philosophy. For the folks that live out there, it probably scares the boo-hoo out of them. So we need representatives from folks that live in that situation, if we can find them.
Yeah, that's what I was asking this, because I mean I feel like I certainly respect the planning board and what they recommend, and Mr. Wachowski, and I get everything he's saying. But my personal view, me personally, is that those folks who may just be outside the ETJ or have family who live in there, or they do business in there, or they're somehow connected, even if they're a little bit outside, are going to have a better feel for what's going on out there than I would as a resident who lives. Now, I guess I'm kind of the other end. I'm almost out that way too. But I think, in fact, probably half the conversations I've had with citizens about what's going on in Spencer have been people who are just outside of Spencer who will just want to know, are we headed out their way? And that, I mean, I think having the ability to put those folks on the board makes sense to me.
You just mentioned a category that I didn't even think about, but how about a business owner in Spencer who lives in China Grove? He knows all the issues that are going on. He knows all the things he's concerned about, but he can't serve on the planning board or any other board because he doesn't live in Spencer. He spends 90% of his time in Spencer, but he doesn't have a say in Spencer.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask, the business owner case of it, but then also the property owner, somebody that doesn't maybe live but owns property within the ETJ. It would be a shame to exclude them because they have a vested interest as a property owner. I guess the question is it a requirement? Because what I'm hearing is what's being proposed, it's not necessarily ETJ representatives, they're almost at-large representatives. Is there a requirement that we formally call it ETJ representatives?
160D requires that you have a proportional number of representatives for the ETJ of your town. So that's why they get called ETJ representatives. I agree with you. In general, they could be, if you adopt this ordinance, they could be considered at large. But to avoid the confusion with 160D, I'd say leave them called.
Well, and I just want to be sure then that if that is the case, we're not in conflict with what's being proposed, but we're not in conflict with 160D.
Well, again, we're defining the statute where it says if you cannot find a sufficient number of qualified members to serve in the ETJ, you can look elsewhere. And we're assigning to the definition of qualified that we can't find anybody that wants to serve in the ETJ, willingness to serve.
You have a graphic that you could show us of that map that you sent us this afternoon. Do you have that available to see?
Don't have it with me today.
Okay.
I could pull up the email and bring that in to you.
Yeah, I was trying to look at it.
I think I can send it to Mike from here, and if I have it,
Magic, yeah.
yeah, if we can get that pulled up. One thing, while I have the floor, I would like to add is to this conversation is I think we've talked previously around the idea of alternate members, and I don't know that on this particular board we have that in place, but that is an option if there are certain in-town residents who are interested, and even if we don't necessarily have in-town seats available, those could be appointed as alternate members so that should the need arise, they're there.
My understanding is we did have those.
We adopted that in a previous.
Yes, that's been corrected. I don't know that they've been appointed yet.
We can't find nominees for the seats we've got open, much less the alternate seat.
There's one in-town seat open right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the 2 ETJ seats.
That's correct.
Okay.
A total of 3 seats.
Plus then 2 additional ETJ
alternates, yeah.
And in-town alternates. So technically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 potential open positions.
Okay, so a business owner who has a business in Spencer but lives outside of Rowan County.
I think 160D requires that they be county residents.
Okay. All right.
We have a number of out-of-state property owners. That would be an interesting conundrum to travel here from Atlanta to serve on the planning board.
Any other questions? Okay. Then what is the board's pleasure here? You have 2 potential options to consider. One would be to limit it to ETJ members or residents within Spencer municipal limits. The other would be within ETJ, Spencer limits, or potentially other parts of Rowan County.
I would like to, I lean toward the recommendation that Steve or Tim County made to limit it to folks within our ETJ.
Okay. So, Mr.
Would you like for
Morgan,
me? Would you like for me to put that in?
you are more, anybody that wants to make a motion, or, you know, if you make a motion, we can have additional discussion following the motion, or we can discuss it now.
So, explain again, if we accept the memo, the amendment as Mr. Butowski presented it to us.
The planning board suggestion is that, let me back up a second. Right now, the ordinance, our ordinance, says that the 2 ETJ seats have to be residents, people that serve in those seats have to be residents of the ETJ.
Right.
If you accept the planning board's modification, then they would either live in the ETJ or in the existing town limits of Spencer. If you accept the original, then they can serve from anywhere in Rowan County, including the ETJ, including the municipal limits of the town of Spencer.
So, Sam, I want to point out an example where this could apply would be the way that the planning board has worded it. Somebody like the Maldens who own a farm could not be a part of the ETJ because they don't actually live there, because we're saying living in the town's ETJ. They own the farm in the ETJ, but not, they don't actually live there. Correct.
Okay.
So that's where what Steve has recommended would allow something like that, and it would be at the planning board and then ultimately our board's discretion whether we were to make that recommendation to the county.
All right, that clears it. Then I would opt for and it would be the ordinances, the text amendment as presented by the staff, basically. Right. All right. So I move to approve the text amendment as presented by staff and stated in ordinance 23-.
All right.
Second.
So there is a motion for Mr. Morgan and a second for Mr. Miller, and that is a motion to approve the language as written in the memo that you have received.
Which means if we could not find anyone within our ETJ or city limits, we could make council.
Now, that's the one that's in your package. That's the one that's
Correct.
in your original package.
That's one I'm referring to.
Okay. So is there any further discussion at this point before we vote?
I do have something to say, or something to ask. As a liaison to the planning board, I sat in on their meetings, and I understand where Mr. Butowski's coming from. My question, or my thoughts on this, is last night, those members who were there promised to get out and beat the bushes looking for people. I wonder if we should table this until we give them one more opportunity to see if they can round up someone who
The
is
adoption of
willing
this
to serve.
wouldn't stop you from appointing somebody that lives in the ETJ. Somebody applies within the ETJ, you can choose that person. So it's not changing what you can do now, it's just giving you more options.
Okay.
And again, that would be their good faith effort.
Mhm. Okay.
I think the key here is that this allows us, it allows the planning board and then ultimately our board the ability to decide on the recommendation. It just gives us more potential options to consider, but ultimately we get to decide that and make the recommendation to the county commission. And ultimately then it's their authority whether or not they approve that.
One thing that I was just discussing with the attorney is that just to make sure everyone's clear on the application process, folks who are seeking seats as ETJ members may apply directly to the county and be appointed. So,
But they can do that now.
yes, but I want to be clear that there is a method by which somebody may apply and be appointed, and you would never know about it. Which again could happen right now, but we just wanted to make sure that you don't think that in all cases it will come through this direction. Now, I think ideally and most typically it would be to be in touch with people and you'll say, you know, hey, thank you, please apply to the county, and then they're appointed. But
Which would be further reason for us not to limit our options, lest we start.
This problem is happening in all small towns across the state and probably the nation. It's not a reflection of Spencer that we're struggling to find people to serve. People's lives are just so filled up with work and other things now that we just don't feel like they have time to do.
Yeah, and I thought that map was consent.
Did you have any luck with the map?
I thought Mike, have you received an email from me? I could turn my laptop around and show it to you on that, or I could pass it down the way.
I mean, I was just interested in seeing.
The map that I drew is actually the town zoning map, and I put a star at the end of 7th Street, the end of 3rd Street, the end of Hollywood, Grub. Yadkin Village is not in our ETJ, so nobody there can serve. Go across the Jefferson Bridge, nobody in the East Spencer side that lives right across the bridge could serve. And then there's people that live right next to, I walk past their houses when I walk in my neighborhood that live in Salisbury. But they were certainly a part of the neighborhood that's part of Spencer. There are other roads coming south out of Spencer and Salisbury. Spencer residents are neighbors to people that live in Salisbury. Those people can serve. So I can paint that visual picture of what that map is showing you. Each one of those stars is a potential area where there are people that might be good people to serve.
So they cannot serve now.
They cannot serve now because they're not in our ETJ. They're right outside the ETJ. If you adopt this ordinance, then you could consider letting them serve.
As you propose.
As I propose. I'm sorry. Correct. Yes. Yep. So as the mayor signs it, it's in place.
Any other questions or discussion? There is a motion and a second on the floor. Does the board need to restate that motion? Okay. All right, so there is a motion. We will now vote. All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right, that is approved unanimously by the board. Thank you very much.
You also need to adopt a statement of consistency.
If you don't mind, I think I'm
Yes.
gonna start asking you to do that every time just to make us all comfortable.
Further move to adopt a statement of consistency stating that this amendment is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan and is in the best interest of the welfare of the city.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Morgan, second by Mr. Muhammad. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? All right. All
If I could
opposed?
tell
That
you
is
a quick story. When I was working in my previous job, the planning board made a suggestion that I took to the Board of Alderman, and then I made a pitch for what we had originally proposed, much like we did tonight. Went back to the next planning board meeting, and the planning board voted to censure me for not following those directions. So if y'all would tell the planning board that I gave you an even presentation on both approaches.
Well, and I would ask that
Could
you
we vote just to censor you?
Go ahead. It'll build up my resume.
Mr. Blunt, I would ask that on behalf of the board, though, to make sure that the planning board knows we do appreciate their recommendations and their efforts. But I think there were just a few additional things that we needed to consider, potential scenarios. Hence the reason we voted the way we did.
I'll pass that on.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to add one more thing. This gives the people in those areas, outside our ETJ, the opportunity to keep the peace. And I think that's important. I think a lot of people that live in the county areas that are adjacent to our municipal boundaries have felt left out and basically helpless to do anything. They feel like they're being steamrolled. Up until probably a year ago, every time I would walk into the military, fire station, I would get, blindsided by people that you're trying to annex us, you're trying to annex us. No, you can't do that anymore. It has to be voluntarily. So I look at this as a positive step to allow those people that have been chomping at the bit to want to have an input and a say into how this area is developed. I hope they seize this opportunity to use.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. All right, the next item on our agenda is to consider authorizing the mayor to execute an interlocal government agreement for the Yadkin River Business and Recreational Park Master Plan Grant. Who's going to come and talk here? Do you want me to?
That would be you, Mr. Blunt.
We spoke about this at your, I think it's your pre-agenda meeting.
3 minutes.
The county has made available to us some state funding for planning for what we call the North Orland area planning. $75,000 that we quite honestly have not quite figured out how far we can stretch that 75. It will start focusing on the Yadkin River Village development in the area in the old North Carolina finishing plant, and then it will spread out into the industrial areas that I've shown you numerous times, that corridor down to Longs Ferry Road, and then ultimately the corridor for Salisbury Avenue, Highway 29 stretching into town, and ED 5861, which is our pedestrian connection back into town.
Better late than never.
So what we're asking, the county commissioner did approve the disposition of the grant to us. The grant agreement is in our hands now, awaiting signature. So what the board needs to do is vote to allow the mayor to sign off on the grant application, grant to receive it.
And again, this was funding that we approached the county commission about, asked if they could help find us some of this. I think it originally started with some of the planning for access into the potential industrial development area on the east side of Long Ferry Road, and then kind of grew from there to really focus in on the old finishing company site and the areas around there where we're putting parks in, looking to redevelop. So they then approached our state representatives who were willing to step up and advocate for us and provide some money. So we're really fortunate that both the county commission and our legislators, specifically Senator Ford, were able to make this happen. The interlocal agreement is basically our agreement with the county so that they can actually give us the money to be able to move forward. Questions or comments? All right, hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we authorize you to sign the interlocal government agreement.
There's a motion by Mr. Morgan, a second from Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Thank you all. All right, next item. We are considering staff to authorizing staff to execute 3 award agreements. And I will invite Ms. Allen forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen.
Good evening.
So I'm coming before you tonight to request that the board accepts 3 recent grant opportunities that we have received from the Robertson Foundation for $5,000, the Woodson Foundation for $5,000, and the Arts and Cultural Development Grant from the Rowan County Arts Council for $2,000 to go to the continuance of the project.
Good job. All right, thank you, Ms. Allen. Are there questions from the board?
Is this going to go for the mural on the side of the building here, or is it overall?
That one is paid for. So this new addition, with the estimates we have at the moment, we believe we will now be able to complete 3 murals. One on the side of Town Hall, one on the former Ludwig and Linoleum and Carpet Building, one on the side of the Dollar General, and we believe we'll have enough left over to begin the concept development process for the mural on the side of the Richard.
Very good. Thank you for all your work.
Thanks
That
for
is
having me.
Yes. Doing a great job.
You're giving Joe Morris a run for his money on getting those grants. All right, board. Is there a motion to authorize staff to execute these 3 award agreements?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Mr. Morgan. All in favor? All right. All opposed? And that is approved unanimously. Again, good work, Scott. Thank you. We'll now move forward with our departmental reports. And I guess we have to hear from Mr. Blunt again.
3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Mayor, members of the board, you have a copy of my written report in your package, which I'll be glad to answer questions on. I will offer one tidbit of information. The truck stop has requested annexation at this point, so we'll be soon bringing you another annexation process. Yay! And that's always an indication that things are getting ready to happen.
So I stopped at the Love's truck stop today on my way down to Charlotte to fill up with fuel, and definitely realized we need another one in Rowan County because it's slammed. Yeah. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Blunt?
I do have a couple of questions, actually. The Jake Alexander, you mentioned you had discussed with somebody the Jake Alexander extension. Is there anything definite, concrete about that?
It's an interesting debate that I'm having with Department of Transportation, having to do with the Longs Ferry Road project more than anything, because there is what they call a rail separation. They call it a grade separation. I call it a bridge across the railroad tracks.
Is that the Charles Street Bridge?
Well, that's what I'm calling it, Charles Street Bridge. They're calling it a connector to the northern portion of the Jake Alexander Loop extension.
Okay.
So, in their minds, that dotted line on the old long-range TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan, which showed a northern loop coming from 601 across the countryside back into Longs Ferry Road on that side, and then the southern side coming from somewhere around the existing end of the Jake Alexander down there at Granite Quarry, coming across through Aldi and Chewy, supposedly connecting on this side of Longs Ferry Road. Pointing out to them, if you look at the maps, it actually gets close to Longs Ferry Road and looks like a dog barked at it or something that took off straight to the river. I'm not sure what the logic was, but nobody had an answer. So we're still debating that issue.
Okay. I also had a question. Are you familiar with the U.S. DOT Wildlife Crossing Pilot Program grant?
Yes, ma'am.
They have $350 million in federal funding for fiscal year 2022 through 2026, and I thought maybe all this problem you're having with turtles,
That we need a wildlife crossing.
you might want to think about.
I'm not sure how I'd teach the turtles to walk across it.
Well, you know, that's an interesting thought, though. Because as we think about this area down here at Goat Gully, it'd be a pretty great spot for a wildlife crossing underneath, given the problems that we're dealing with there.
We'll be glad to stop what we're doing and apply for a grant. Get on with tomorrow.
I've forgotten now exactly. I've forgotten now exactly when the deadline was, but I thought maybe that $350 million. Yeah.
There are out west. There are a number of those crossings. Yeah. Serious, large.
They've actually just installed one in Concord not too long ago. Yeah,
basically
Annapolis and Concord.
Yeah, I know that that's the case, but I thought you do seem to have trouble with the turtles. That's all.
It's clear.
All right. Anything else for Mr. Blunt?
Well, if you want to hear more about the EEG grant and anything, don't know if Joe has anything
Well, I was gonna invite him forward, yes.
beyond the last one, but
You could thank Peter for that.
welcome. Well, as we were talking about potential at the, I think the evolution of the EEG grant and where we're headed, perhaps rethinking about goats and such would be helpful.
So, we are preparing an application for the North Carolina Attorney General's Environmental Enhancement Grant. We're specifically focusing on the area at Spring Hill Branch. There's a little road there where the Radiator Shop used to be called Spring Hill Drive. And so it's sort of commonly referred to as the Goat Gully because of past efforts by the town to bring in small herds of goat to consume the cubs on the site. And so one of the things that you can use this EEG grant for is land acquisition. And there are actually two parcels there that are pretty important to us. The preponderance of the land where the gully is located, the Little Branch, is owned by the town of Spencer, technically part of Standback Forest. There is another parcel that is owned by an outdoor advertising company. It's a location for a billboard, and it was acquired through by Lamar Outdoor Advertising through the acquisition of another billboard company. There is not a billboard on the site, and our zoning ordinance won't allow them to do it. The Radiator Shop adjacent to it is currently unoccupied. There is a property owner that is making some improvements to the property. But the grant will allow land acquisition, property acquisition. And so what we're proposing is a two-phased approach that would potentially allow the town to buy the property. And that will be followed up in a second phase by a reforestation process that would include return of the goats that we would bring them back in. Before doing that, a semi-permanent fence, and we would probably bring the goats in for 3 to 4 cycles of clearing, and then we would be in a position where we could do some land grading, some creation of trails. There's a possibility for some type of a water retention. What's the term? Bioretention in the creek. The mayor has floated the idea of a small pond in the area. So that's one thing we're taking into consideration. But the first step is the land acquisition. This is one of the few grants that the state has for municipalities for land acquisition. There are other programs that favor land trust and conservation organizations. And this one has an environmental justice component to it because the location of the trailhead there at Standback Forest is right in the center of 3 neighborhoods in Spencer, East Spencer, and Salisbury, where there are economically disadvantaged people living. So this would be a recreational access to Standback Forest, and it would, quite frankly, clean up an eyesore. And so that's where we're heading at the moment, and the mayor has provided a letter of support, and hopefully we'll know something later this summer as to whether we can proceed with the acquisition. I have spoken with the owners of the property, and they're willing to discuss possible. They're not adverse to it.
Return of the Goats.
Return of the Goats. And I
Sounds
have
like a song.
It could be. I have a good friend, John Peeler, who actually lives in Davies County. He's a neighbor of mine, and I served with him on the land trust board years ago. He has a great farm, and he has brought them to my property, and I've used them a few times, and so I know a little bit about this. But John's, he's a great resource to us, and we could probably do it very economical.
Mr. Taylor, you might actually want a permanent staff of goats. You could use them elsewhere around town, couldn't you? Yeah, okay. I don't know how they would fit into our class and compensation plan, but
They'd be in there with Charlie.
The city of Durham actually has a goat eradication program.
wait, a kudzu eradication or a goat eradication?
I'm sorry. Vegetation eradication program.
Okay.
Are those organically fed goods?
Very good. I'll keep you posted.
Are there any?
Really, I'm also sensing the potential with our environmental arts center that we could host goat yoga classes.
Goat cheese
All right,
making.
sorry. Moving along.
I do have one question. Are there any cleanup issues with the radiator shop? Is that?
That would be part of our due diligence, that we would need to have some investigation of, at very minimum, phase one. I'm fairly certain there aren't any underground storage tanks on. Well, I say fairly certain. I don't believe there are, but there may be some above ground storage issues. Before hurdling the town of Spencer in that pathway, we would want to make sure we knew what was on the site. That's the question. Yes. What is the time period for the dedication for the park? That's a great question. And I'm going to answer this in a way that I don't mean to be disrespectful. We're a lot closer now than the last time.
What a good answer.
Let me just give you an update of sort of the status of things. The issues regarding the subsurface soil and the construction of the retaining wall, which sort of delayed us for a while, are in our rearview mirror. We also had that period back in late winter, early spring, where it was just wet and there was a lot of delay. We felt like working to finish our construction management thing, and the contractor that we set up a routine of regularly scheduled meetings with them, and so that began to pick up the pace, and then it quit raining. And so the project is making very good progress now. There are the pavers are being installed. The pipe rails and fencing are being installed. The grading of the actual trail that goes from the parking lot back to the intersection of North Carolina Finishing Lane, the rough grading is completed, or I'd say 95% completed as of today. I think it would be realistic to start thinking about a June a dedication. Next year? No, late this year. I think that's realistic. We're going to have a meeting this coming week. We're meeting every 2 weeks with the contractor and the landscape architect. Our big issue for discussion at this time is going to be related to the landscaping and the timing of the landscaping. Now that we have water on site, we have irrigation, a hydrant, and backflow prevention device and that sort of thing. And so there's water available for keeping things live during the summer. So, I think realistically, we could host a dedication probably in June, but I don't know if we want to do that, or is there for example, like Creek Week this year is in September. Is that something that we would want to make? I know people are going to start using it.
The race, the 5K and bike ride and all that.
So it's a conversation to have with the board here about when you to do that. I feel like over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll start really looking for them. They're doing great. Flagpole's up. Mr. Smith is very happy with the flagpole.
Certainly the project's going to progress to the point where it's going to be usable. Even if for some reason we elect to hold off on some landscaping elements, we have to determine that, but it's going to be usable to within the next month or so, and then we could after the fact have the celebration if needed or what. But we're in the short rows.
So we're in the second week of May. I think in the next week we'll probably have all of the pavers completed. Following week we should have asphalt in the parking lot, and in 3 weeks landscape. And I think that's a very realistic time. So that puts us in June. I mean, I wouldn't send out the invitations now. We wait, a little bit.
Still plans for the
zip line. Let me add, and I noticed.
Don't hold. Try to find funding for it.
So the public works crew this past week mowed the 2-acre tract that was donated by the Historical Museum Foundation. It's a beautiful piece of land, and they did a great job of cleaning it up. Town manager and Mr. Softly were able to work together to find a little bit of money to have some surveying work done. So we're having the property surveyed, topography of the land, identification of any utilities or improvements on the site, and that will be a basis for a master plan for that property. And it's got really large mature trees on it, and it's just a beautiful site. It's going to be a great public access.
Keep in mind, you may want to put the word out that there's any kind of excavation or anything like that. I know that there are historic groups here in North Carolina that are very, very interested in helping because of the artifacts that they may come across. Do you have anybody? I was thinking far enough ahead to think about what we're going to do with that. I know it's a lot of positions, places, things that we could consider, but do we have a group working on this?
Well, actually, it kind of goes back to the item that you just approved a few minutes ago about the planning funds for that North Rowan area. And although that has not really been fully vocalized as to what the possibilities might be, I would like to think that we could get a plan for our park out, or at least a master plan.
And I mentioned this to the community affairs. They might be.
I'm sorry.
The community affairs committee.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's it. Okay. Excellent group to have involved.
Thank you, Mr. Morris.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Osborne, Code Enforcement.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, board members. Only thing I'd like to add to my report, and it may be premature, but the building at 437 North Salisbury Avenue, the old gas station, it's been vacant for some time without a roof, was put up for sale recently. But I did receive a call from a realtor from a prospective new owner who is a general contractor who wants to purchase the building. The former owner obviously backed out of his plans, so at this point, the new owner hopefully has an idea what he wants to do with it. He's a general contractor, like I said, so I'm assuming he knows what he's getting involved with. I've not had any contact with the new owner, but I just want to bring that up as a point of interest. Other than that, I have nothing to add to my report.
All right, questions from the board?
Yes. I know that the garage started putting in the vehicle out front.
You're referring to the new edge down here at 200. Yes.
Being enforced?
Not at this present moment. Steve and I did have a conversation about the issues going on with that property this afternoon. I've got to put some things together and contact the property owner in accordance with the directive not to speak directly to Mr. King. So that's something that's in the works.
That needs to be done as soon as possible.
I agree.
Any other questions?
What is the progress in this house in Norfolk and one that you put a lien on last Thursday?
314.
Yeah.
Apparently, they have rented the property out. I just spoke to the new tenant this afternoon, and they moved in. The last contact I had was with the wife of the owner when they were showing the house to the new tenants. Their intentions apparently is to demolish it, but I've had no contact, nor has Steve, from what I understand, about demolishing the property with a permit. So at this point right now, they're under $50 a day fines. I've already submitted the end of month fine to them, which is on top of their initial $250 fine for failing to comply. And I'm still waiting to hear from them.
Question, this may be a collective question. Are we really headed towards summary abatement there? And that thing's about to fall in, isn't it?
It's saddled out pretty good, and at this point, I'm not sure if we're going through summary abatement. That's something we haven't discussed yet. That's something we can talk about during the week.
Concerned that they're continuing to lease it out.
I did talk to the tenant. He has no intention to spend any time in and around that building due to the condition. He is aware that I do have a case on the garage. But I told him it was best. That was between me and the landowner, not him. But I'm happy to see that there is a tenant in that property to maintain the exterior of that property. So for the past 2.5 years, there's been nobody in that property to maintain it. And so he's very eager to maintain the property. It seems like he's going to be a good tenant.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Osborne. All right. You have our police department report. My understanding from Mr. Franzese is that our entire crew is tied up, actively working the case from earlier today. Anything else you want to mention?
No, sir. Unfortunately, without us on Thursday, but Chief Howell was able to provide his report at the agenda.
Can I say something?
You absolutely may.
Okay. You know, I walked up tonight and we had these 4 or 5 ladies up there talking about the situation, and I noticed the whole meeting, you know, we had things to do like this. They were very much concerned about the youth running wild in that area. I really think we need to address that as far as that goes. I don't know if we can put a time limit on when kids need to be in. I don't know if that's put a curfew,
Yeah,
or
so
something like that.
I was just thinking about that earlier tonight. I know. So, and those comments that you've heard, we've heard them from Mr. Mosher, we've heard them from other folks around that there have been issues with younger folks running around at all hours of the night. You know, Salisbury has a curfew program, and I'm not sure of the logistics of that or how well it works, that sort of thing. But it's definitely, I agree, something that I think we
gotta
need
do
to look
something.
at.
What about the
parents? I mean, are the parents?
That's what they're saying. That's what some of these ladies are saying out there. They say we got some parents that really don't care whether their kids are inside by the time dark. So you just don't have the parental guidance that we really need as far as that. So we got to do something.
There have been a few problem locations where there are multiple teenagers around, and it appears to be no parents ever around.
I've actually heard people comment that they see kids running while during the day. Those kids should be at school, but, will a curfew at dark or 7 o'clock or whatever?
The curfew would not have addressed what happened today, that's for sure.
Yeah, because that was middle
But
of
it
the
would help.
It needs, that's part of the problem. And that's what these women out here are talking about. Those kids are running wild. And I think we need to do something. Maybe a suggestion is we have a police advisory board.
We do.
And I don't know if they've done anything lately, but I think they need to get involved in this situation as well. But we can't let things go like that is. These people are concerned.
Well, I think we all are.
Well, I know they are. I know they are, and they're dependent. They're waiting on the police department and everybody else to make a decision what they're going to do. We need to do something.
So I would ask, I guess, that Peter, if you'll coordinate with staff and start to look into some potential options, what maybe some other communities are doing as well, to report back to the board on for us to consider. And I think involving the police advisory board, and citizens advisory board would be good, because I know there's some folks on that board that spend a lot of time dealing with you.
Keep in
Mr.
mind,
Muhammad's being awful quiet too. I'm sure you have some thoughts on strategies.
I don't think he had seen the memo yet about what had happened today.
What's new? They have 2 more days before they're supposed to.
I heard earlier this afternoon it was 3 days before the contract.
Well, we can stay up here all night long, talk about things that we can do. If the children are unsupervised, then someone needs to be held accountable, whether it's through a truancy officer or a police officer. Somebody needs to take the responsibility to remove them from the neighborhood at night and bring a little bit of peace and quiet to the residents, who I'm sure are very, very tired of having to deal with this over the past year.
and keep in mind, school's gonna be out in 2 or 3 weeks, and it won't get there.
Well, I would challenge our board to start researching some, if you can do some research as well, help our staff, strategies other boards have implemented, talking with your folks and other elected boards as well. And then Peter and staff will evaluate some options as well. But I think you raise a good point, Mr. Miller, in that it is an issue that we've got a lot of unsupervised running around. And I think there's an enforcement strategy. The other strategy is, we talked about a community center to get kids engaged, and I think it's a lot of different things that we've got to do as opposed to just one thing. But we do have to start tracking that.
Sergeant Leonard may be able to step in here, sent him a message. He may
Okay.
step in.
Yeah, we'll circle back
Yeah.
to him if he's able to. And I just want to, thank both our police and fire. I know they had to respond today. Joel had to respond as well, I believe, and so it was a team effort.
Actually, it's Chief File that stepped in.
Good evening, Chief.
We were just talking about the situation from earlier today and the need to research some.
The big thing that came up was hearing around the community that we've got a lot of youth running wild at all times of the day and night, and we're interested in what strategies we can implement to try and curb some of that. We've talked about curfew, and Salisbury's done that, but other strategies that folks might have implemented elsewhere that seem to work.
Yeah, very active scene right now. So I will say we're still actively working this. We've got a lot of people in this back hallway right now. I really cannot provide much of an update as of now. but yes, definitely youth involvement. There's youth involvement in what we're working right now. As far as strategy, I honestly don't know what will be effective here. I will tell you that, quite honestly, though it's not widespread youth problem in our community, it's very narrow as far as the ones that are causing problems, repeat offenders, which is very common in that system. So yeah, I believe that's something that we may sit down and look at. Caught me off guard on a real good answer for you right now. I don't know if I can really give you a great
Well, and I
answer.
don't think we're expecting an answer right now. I think it's something
Yeah.
we've all recognized, and we don't have a silver bullet for fixing it.
Right.
But
And I will say, widespread the problems that we've been seeing, we're not unique in our community seeing them. Obviously, nobody wants to see them, but we're not unique in what we're seeing. I can't really say that like a curfew would necessarily be beneficial, but I couldn't say it would hurt either. As far as I don't think the offenses and the crimes that we've seen in the past few months, I don't necessarily think a curfew would have fixed those. Like anything else, it's one of those things where a person's willing to have, if they've got a sound home and the parents are willing to keep them home and abide by curfew, then they obviously wouldn't be involved in serious crimes that we're seeing that they're involved in. So definitely something that could be looked at. I think it might be a preventive measure for some of our own youth in the community. But quite honestly, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is youth from outside of our community. They're not even special residents. So that's good for us. It's not our own people causing a lot of these problems, but unfortunately, they're still coming to our community and doing those same offenses.
well, and I think you hit on something that I think, and that has to do with repeat offenders, repeat juvenile offenders, and I think from our perspective, we need to be advocating to our legislators, to our district attorney, and to others in the court system that we have got to be more stringent and strict. Because, obviously the repeat offenders, their offenses are only getting worse. It seems like.
Very much so. For those that don't know, the juvenile justice system is based upon points, so there's time points based upon, the offenses that the individual is charged with. We're going to be having that conversation with our own college juvenile justice partners tonight about some of the individuals that were involved in today's events. So we will see what direction they take that. It does take a lot for juvenile services to come out and actually pick up somebody that's underage, and a lot of this changed back whenever, we were the last state that was still allowed to charge those that were 16 and 17 as adults. So whenever we lost that ability, and now that is handled in the juvenile justice system, that put a little bit of hurt on the way we were handling things. So that seems to be a very pivotal age. We have a very small amount of people that are 14 and 15 causing this level of problems, but we do have a lot of them that are 16 and 17 causing it. And unfortunately, where we used to charge them as adults and take care of the problem ourselves the same night, now we have to rely on other people outside of our community to do that for us.
Chief, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I've worked for an attorney for about 8 years as a legal aid. I know the juvenile courts are basically a revolving door. At least that's what I've been told. And that's part of the problem. Kids today grow up and they're not held accountable for anything. They think they can do anything they want to without any repercussions, without any type of somebody coming up and spanking them on the rear end. Okay, and that's part of the problem. The juvenile court system has, and a lot of law enforcement officers, it's a joke. So we either need to look more at the state level to try to implement a firmer or a firm resolution that will deal with problems like this, because it's not getting any better. You can go and find every community out there. This thing is snowballing. People are becoming more and more barbaric. They're not willing to sit down and have a conversation anymore. They'd rather put a slug in your head. And that's what we're having to deal with. Can you say whether or not that any arrests have been made? Because there are some people that think that this has become the Wild West.
Right.
And we look, here we are trying to bring people, new families into Spencer, with events like Winterfest, what they're doing at the library, and then bam, one afternoon, all that, is basically turned on its nose.
Most definitely. So I can share a very, very limited amount of information. I will say that there are juveniles involved. So, multiple juveniles involved. So to answer your question, we have 4 out of 5 individuals that were involved in our custody currently. We are waiting to see what juvenile services will be doing on that. So it's going to be some very late nights for all of us that are here. We had a lot of cooperative assistance today. Rowan County Sheriff's Office, the FBI has been up here assisting on it, on the Salisbury PD. So to answer your question, I don't know what the outcome's going to be tonight. There's going to be a lot of phone calls, and we're just now to the point of making those calls to juvenile services and finding out what that is going to entail. I will tell you that the vehicle, which we chased into Salisbury after this occurred, fortunately we had a unit that was basically a block away when it happened. That vehicle was stolen out of Winston-Salem. So that brings a whole nother part of it, and I will tell you that it was stolen out of Winston-Salem. Those people came down to Rowan County today, and they happened to come by here after they had done their joyriding in Salisbury. So aside from that, I really can't say a whole lot else about it. Currently, obviously there'll be a press release with the amount of information we can release based upon it having juveniles involved. Obviously, we're a little bit limited on what we'll be able to release on that. But there will be something coming out, hopefully this evening, after we get some firm answers from what juvenile services is going to do with that. So we are looking at numerous charges. Obviously, it's unfortunate. It is isolated. I know it doesn't feel isolated, but it is isolated effectively. But again, it's people from outside our community coming down here to cause havoc inside our city.
So I will say this to our board, and it's something that I have done previously when we had a case of somebody a juvenile that was a continued nuisance to our citizens. It helps correct those to our judges that are responsible for juvenile court and to the juvenile justice system. The other thing that I would say is our board needs to strongly advocate to our state legislature that we need to be more strict in the punishment of the adults that are responsible for these juveniles. Because ultimately they are either not doing their job or, ultimately they're responsible. And somebody has to serve the time and for the crime.
Somebody's got to be held accountable.
Exactly. And if the youth are not being held accountable, it's the adults that are responsible for them. It's their responsibility to be accountable. So I would just, I know personally I'm going to be reaching out to quite a few folks. I think this is a much bigger issue than just Spencer. It's statewide, but it's hitting pretty close to home. And I would say to Chief File and to Sergeant Leonard, thank you all for the work that you've done. I think everybody was here training today, and so it was convenient that everybody was here together and able to respond rapidly, but not something that you all wanted to have to deal with tonight and in the nights to come. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely not. I do want to respond to your Mr. Morgan's first comment about the juvenile justice system. I will 100% tell you, you will not find a single officer that was happy when we lost the ability to charge 16 and 17-year-olds as adults. It's not because we want to make people career criminals, because we want to be able to resolve situations the moment of. We don't like having to be, we feel like we're held hostage by the system to some extent because we can't solely take care of the problem that's
You can't do your job.
And we're supposed to be able to fix the problem right now, tonight, and we have to rely on other people. And that's not always bad. We enjoy teamwork, but at the end of the day, we like to fix the problem our way and do it right now. So we do feel a little bit hostage, by the way, and I don't see that being undone, but there needs to come a time, and this is definitely, I agree with writing, your senators and legislators. There definitely needs to be a time where adult crimes, when a juvenile commits adult crimes, it needs to be dealt with swiftly. It doesn't need to be, we need to double check our points. You've got an adult doing the same thing. They would be in handcuffs and they already be sitting behind bars. We need to be able to have the ability to get those secure custody orders and get these juveniles off the street. Obviously, there's a little bit different. This is the same thing we explained to them when we interview the kids. There's a difference between a street beat and you slug it out with your buddy on the basketball court and you go shoot somebody. Big difference. And it needs to be treated as such. So we definitely appreciate your support. Anything you can do helping to push the issue. I know that's much higher than our level here, but I think they need to hear it. So, and I will try to brief the board and send out a press release as soon as we have something further.
Yeah, I know you were out when I made a suggestion, but I think we need to get the police positive to kind of help them with the problem we have. I mean, that's what they're for.
Right.
I want to see it, and I think most of them can relate to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say as a general rule, I don't want all of our youth to be looked upon negatively. I mean, we have really good youth relations in our community, really good between the schools, the SROs, the community events, the ballparks. We really have good youth relations. It sees very few, which is like it always is. It's the same in the adult world. You have a very few adults that ruin it for everybody. So I mean, I will say, I think we do pretty good with the youth now. I feel like we do good. About every person in this back hall is a coach. I think we're doing as good as we can on that. I will say there's always room for improvement. That's definitely something that we need to look into.
Well, I think the big thing is being able to have some more teeth with those habitual offenders because you know who they are. Right?
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, if you take your people that are committing the crimes over and over and over and over, you take that group out of it. The group of youth that we have left in our community are wonderful. No problem. Same thing as you have when you go to a local school. I mean, any principal, they won't do it, but they can. Any principal out there can identify the 10 students that cause problems for the 90% of the school. And it's very much the same way as what we're dealing with now.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, and stay safe.
Thank you.
All right, Chief Lanning, Fire Department.
Mayor and board, how are you this afternoon?
How are you?
I'm tired, but I'm here. My prepared monthly report is before you. There's two things I do want to highlight. 751 is expected to have been repaired. It is still out of service. Sitting at Public Works, Joel and his staff are doing everything they can to get it repaired. We thought it was going to be a simple $20 part. Now it's a $600 part. Expected to be here tomorrow. Do what?
That's far for the cold.
Yes. It's today's like a repeat of another Monday, but it's okay. Did receive our pickup yesterday, the initial pickup that you guys approved. They promised to hold for us. We called them right after the meeting, told them we were a go. They sold it the following day, even after we talked to them that afternoon. So they were able to find one that was not identical, but they're willing to make it identical. And so we got that in from Tennessee yesterday, and we got to take it back a few times to get some running boards stuff added to it where it is equal. But so that is at the station. The expected upfit for it to be ready to truly put in service is July, sometime in the middle of July. Last thing is coffee with the Chiefs. I'm not sure if Chief File went. I was not in attendance. Had to do an assessment center for Granite Quarry Fire Department, so I was there for about 2 days. But if you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you, Chief. Questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
When reading your report, it says finalized conceptual floor plans are presented for addition, awaiting direction from the Board of Alderman.
Yeah.
Where are we on that?
So that's a $10 million question, right? Yeah. So we've talked some about the project and the idea of a $10 million price tag. And, that project could be financed. The debt service on that is something like 20 cents on the tax rate. The alternate funding sources are going to be necessary to proceed with that project, whether that be other grants. FEMA has a grant out there called Assistance to Firefighters that I think well suited towards this project that could help offset that cost, but that's going to need to be something that helps propel that forward is revenue source beyond just continuing to finance it.
So what guidance are you looking for from the board?
I don't think we denied
No,
it.
no, not
Yeah.
necessarily. And that was in there from the last time. For me, it just keeps me in line, right? Here's the next step. We've accomplished it. Keep it in there, and it's there, right? We don't forget about it. More so than looking for any sort of guidance. And the one thing I will say about the AFG, and just to keep in mind, that is an option. The chances of being successful in an AFG grant and a safer grant are very slim. So we're kind of back to that. What is the highest priority? Staffing, obviously. But as we continue to add staff, the current situation of no room becomes even more.
I do have a question. The concept for the addition compared to the city of Salisbury's new fire station,
It is cheaper than our.
right? So I was going to ask you, what's the comparison between the two? I mean, should we expect that potentially it could come in less than what?
So I'm not sure who they used.
Right.
That was one thing that it kind of surprised me that they're building a complete brand new station top to bottom for $2-3 million less than what our addition is going to be. I would hate to say that maybe it's a difference in contractors and who we went through to design. Maybe it's a possibility, but I don't really truly know what the big difference is. I know Station 3 is a single company house. They have one fire truck, right? So they may not have. Again, we're not building bays; that's pre-existing. Right. But there are building stuff that we currently won't have to build for our addition. So I'm a little confused why there is so much. But I can definitely look into that.
If you can look into it and ask them, because obviously they would have had a conceptual cost.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to know what their conceptual cost was compared to what it actually came in.
I can do that.
I know Bill Bergen is working on that.
Yeah.
And
I know we've worked with Bill in the past and had him review some stuff when we were doing this building. Would it be worth us having him take a look over what our consultant's done thus far just to make sure we're in line?
It may help verify.
Yeah. I think that would be helpful. And I think from the perspective, at least, I'm maybe speaking out of turn for the board, but we need to continue with momentum on this, which means we need to pretty quickly come to a resolution of what we're going to do with this. And I would almost propose that we hold a special meeting just as a workshop specifically for this to begin to give some clarity for staff going forward, how we want to proceed and what our options for funding and financing might be. Any thoughts on that, Peter?
I think that would. What was the timeline? Are you wanting to do that after we get through the budget process, or within it?
No, I think it would be prudent for us to go ahead and get through the budget process, but then quickly after that, maybe we hold a special meeting in late June to discuss it.
Sounds good.
That's good with the board.
We need to move on.
Can we have can we add any tax value? I mean, can we add any tax? I guess what I'm saying is, where can we go about getting the money if it's not something in the budget?
Right, and I don't think, I mean, my perspective is, from a tax standpoint, we can't, we've maxed out what we can expect and ask our citizens to do.
That's what I think too.
Yeah. But I think what we need to do is outline what our we need to have a working session to begin to outline what our funding options are, what, financing, whether it's USDA financing or those sorts of things look like. There's also the aspect of one versus two floors and space and property needs. We need to have some time just as a group and staff to sit down and work through those things.
But we have to do our homework before we can ask for them for help as far as that goes. That's why we need to get it pinned down.
Correct. Right.
I think, again, I don't want to push this thing down the road. I think we need to, like you said, maybe end of May or June, we should work on this and get this final.
And, me and Mr. Franzese had talked, there are aspects of our design that I would consider state of the art for local.
Yeah.
Very few fire stations have a legitimate carcinogen reduction zone, right? And then obviously, that's just going to help us prevent developing cancer long term later in our career. But there are pieces that if it came down to crunching pennies that could be removed, although it may not be ideal. There's plenty of that.
Would it be possible for us to have a special called meeting on Tuesday, May 23rd? Does that give collectively us and staff enough time to talk about, have some options related to funding, financing, those sorts of things?
But that would be before we do the budget,
Correct.
get through the budget process.
Yeah.
Theoretically, you got everything designed, right? Basically.
Well, no. The concept's been developed.
Yeah.
What has been proposed is a design-build contract. So
Okay.
basically, what you would do
I
is
got
hire
you.
a contractor, and the
To do it.
contractor subs an engineering
Yeah.
firm,
To do it.
and we would select that based on qualifications of the contractor and the engineering firm.
Right. Now, that's not what Salisbury's doing.
Theirs was hard bid, wasn't it? I believe.
I think it was.
Yeah. So theirs was traditional design.
The
Then they did.
K&D, or I think they were
Yeah.
doing. Yeah. And you still think that's the way to go as far as that goes?
The design-build process.
Yeah.
I do.
I think
For
we
the type
use
of quality
Concord.
that we're talking about, the fact it's an
What
existing building that we're adding on to, I think it is.
Okay. What time?
6 p.m.
6.
or 5:30. What do you prefer?
I thought
6. Yes.
6.
Okay.
6.
All right. 6 p.m.
Maybe 25.
Yes.
Any further questions?
No. Not
You
really.
got a rival date of your new spot?
Do what?
You got a rival date of your
So
new
they
spot?
have moved up pre-construction meetings, which obviously have to go to Wisconsin for. It's now October versus November.
Okay.
And anticipating final inspection at the beginning of June of this coming year. And about 2 weeks later, which we did express that if it came before July 1, that even if it meant Atlantic held it in their parking lot for July 1. So, and then it'll obviously go to Atlantic, and they'll go through the entire truck again just to make sure everything meets their standards before we actually take it up.
Very good.
Anticipated July 1st it'll be sitting in.
That's good.
Pretty positive.
Wow.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. Next is finance report. Oh, nope, sorry.
No.
Public Works.
Yeah, he's
Joey,
gonna
you
give
can
him
do finance.
He's gonna give a finance report. This ought to be interesting.
I took all my recycling today, so they got stuff to sell.
We'll leave that part to John. We'll leave that part to John. For sure. Well, good evening, Mayor and members of the board.
Good evening.
Just a few notes from my report and some updates on several. The leaf vac has stopped. We are not running it any longer. Won't start back until October. So any loose material has to be in bags. It's going to be removed.
Does that include sticks?
No, your sticks and that kind of stuff will be
Okay.
normally picked up. It's just your loose,
Throw it
like
over
your.
our neighbor's yard.
I will leave that up to you, Mr. Morgan.
Sam said we could all drive it and dump it off in his yard.
Okay. Leaves and everything can go to Sam's yard.
He was mowing today. It looked nice. We could help him with that. Thanks. Yeah.
For sure. We had a very successful mulch giveaway this spring. A lot of citizens. We delivered more than people came and picked up, but still we got rid of delivered 29 loads to residents, which was a very busy morning. Normally we stop at 12 and we were here until 2 o'clock. We quit taking orders at 11:30 to just be able to get done. I thank my guys for sticking around and getting everything there. So.
Still got a pile I'm trying to put
I
out.
still
My boys quit on me.
Oh, well, I still have more, so that's why I put the fee schedule. So if you run across anyone that wants it, this is how they can go about getting it, and all they have to do is contact me, and we can deliver usually within a day. I won't say it can be same day, but the next day, by sure, we can get it to them. We almost have water at the trailhead. Almost. We're waiting on a sticker. As soon as I get a sticker, we get that sticker installed, we will have
It's been approved by one inspector.
Anyway, that's all we're lacking is just some signage on it. And as soon as that gets there, then we will have water. But the meter and everything's already in place. Everything's good. And I do want to thank Mr. Miller for his help and get the permits and stuff for us. Getting it done. He said I did it almost his approval. So.
I said he did it almost as good as I would.
Almost.
Not quite.
He wants to keep me humble, I guess. Town manager mentioned earlier about street paving. We did release the bids yesterday. We will be opening the bids on June the 1st, that afternoon. So, I've got some great interest. I've had 3 different contractors already call me, asking different questions on making sure when needs to be where and that kind of stuff. And so, hopefully we'll have a good turnout as far as the bids on it. The painting of the library. I mentioned last month that we had another painter back out, but I have contacted a painter, and it's possible that he could get started as early as May the 30th. So it's possible that we'll have him here by the end of the month, if not shortly afterwards, to get that painted. So, everything else is in the report. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Mr. Taylor, questions from the board? Thank you.
Remind citizens that Memorial Day, garbage will
I
be
didn't even think
different.
about that. Yes, Memorial Day is our first holiday this year that actually will affect trash schedule. It falls on a Monday, so it'll just advance it one day. So everything other that week will be fine.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, now our finance report.
And you do have
Unless
that.
Mr. Taylor wants to do it. Mr. Francis.
Yes, thank you. The finance report is available. Of course, we talked quite a lot about budget and numbers earlier this evening, but things are continuing as we would like them to finance-wise for the fiscal year. And I don't know that we specifically said this earlier, but we anticipate at year end we should be at about $250,000 of revenue over expenditures.
All right, any questions on the finance report? All right, next is our library report.
So, as Ms. Fletch had mentioned, this past Saturday was the May event, the annual May event, and great turnout, and all the performers were amazing. Allergies not so much, but it was really good weather. And for April, earlier in the month, there was an event at the middle school that Beverly attended, and she was able to publicize the May event, which there were a few amount of children also present, which was great, and informed the parents of the summer reading program. And there was a fair amount of interest from both parents and kids while she was there. And during the month, Ms. McCraw gave out bunny-shaped containers with Play-Doh for the kids, which that was donated by the Silver Lining store in the shopping center here. There were also crafts for the kids to do. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of events going on because she was busy planning for this past weekend, as well as July events. And there were 10 new people who liked their page, our Facebook page, and that was in part due to boosting, ad boosting for those events that were coming up. And also the Salisbury Post and Salisbury Magazine they both advertised for the May event, and that led to callers from Denton and Winston-Salem calling the library to let Beverly and us know that they were interested in the May event. That is how they found out from those two sources. So that was good publicity there.
Great, thank you. Questions on the library report? All right, thank you very much. We'll move to our town manager report, Mr. Francis.
Well, thank you very much. We've had a few repairs here at Town Hall in the last month. Both our HVAC unit that's controlling the lobby, incidentally, it has been much more comfortable in there. Also, our electrical panel. The ARPA report that is due on an annual basis was due at the end of April, and we got ours in well in advance. We also are seeking members for our Dragon Boat team for this summer. We're certainly trying to get some more staff involvement, and pleased that Chief Lanning has agreed to serve as captain this year.
I need to interject something. I have heard that former football coach Roger Seacrest will be participating. I want you to know that
Let's come up with a better name than we had last year.
So I submitted as the Spencer Steaming Dragons, I believe. Either that or Steaming Paddlers. I can't remember.
Come up with that.
Well, I floated it last summer and got a couple of shirts, and nobody saying no, so I went with it.
So who are we now?
The word steaming is in it. I believe we're the Spencer Steaming Dragons, unless we're the Spencer Steaming Paddlers. I can't remember which one I said. But
let's just hope we don't battle like we're a steaming pile of well. I'll leave it there.
So the good news I want to provide is that we have gotten a date that our generator is going to be installed. That date is May 17th. It's arrived. Of this year. It's been checked. It's apparently the right kind of generator.
It's not LP.
Correct. So that was good news to receive, and we look forward to that.
Now, are we not paying anything extra?
No, we're not.
Good.
All right. Anything else? Any questions for Mr. Francis? All right, thank you very much. We have reached requests and comments by the mayor and board members. We'll start with Ms. Sledge.
Remember to say. Okay. I wanted to wish all the women, ladies who are mothers and grandmothers a happy Mother's Day this Sunday. I wanted to let you know too that I will be attending the Central Carolina Council meeting tomorrow to represent the town of Spencer.
I may see you then.
Okay.
My new office is
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'll see you there then. There is in the interest of being non-political, I guess, there is a Democrats breakfast each second Saturday of the month, and the speaker this month is going to be a judge who is going to be speaking about the justice system from the judge's point of view. And that's an open meeting for anybody who wants to come. You can find information about it on the Rowan County Democrats page. And I think that's all I have to say.
Yeah, Mr. Muhammad.
Question. Thank everyone, town staff, and department heads for the work that they're doing. Know that in East Spencer, I think this weekend they're having a Mayfest, and in conjunction with Mother's Day, Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers to be. Be honest. Yeah. Big Mayfest is supposed to take place on 13th, which is Saturday from 12 noon to 6 p.m. I think they're gonna have some singing and some food trucks and splash pad and some fun events at 200 Robertson Road in East Spencer. And my spouse is actually pretty cool.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad.
That's it.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I promised some people down at the food trucks at Little Italy on Wednesday evening. I think they started at about 4:30, but there's 7 or 8 food trucks down there. The food is good, and I told them that I would announce that at board meeting so people in the neighborhood and in the community would know and could perhaps they visit. That will be tomorrow. And also, I wanted to announce that the 8th graders took a big field trip, and Rylan, my grandson, who is an 8th grader at North Middle, was telling me all about it. And they went to stand back woods and walked the trails, and he was just so impressed. He really was. And he said all of it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Mr. Howe.
In reference to the events that I guess will be public record and will be talked about, and Mr. Moser and some of the things that were said earlier today, I'm all for following the process where that's prudent to do so, and I'm all for things like second chances and understanding, but I'm not sure that where we are with the situation behind us, I guess on 5th and Yadkin is the time for any of those things. This is alarming, and Mr. Moser and his folks are good folks. They have brought great business and people to our town. Roger and Pam, my family often, our store is just down the corner. My dad and brother walk these up and down 5th Street all the time. We've got folks, community folks, who are breathing new life in this building behind us with the church, and if we're lucky, that may be a boon for entrepreneurship in our town. I don't know what needs to be done, and I agree that we talked about creativity among board and staff, but I think thinking outside the box and doing whatever can be done to mitigate this as fast as possible. As we talked about earlier, our law enforcement folks are doing everything they can, but their hands are tied. There are things that we can do that fall outside of what they can do. If respectfully the property owners over here can't control their tenants, then maybe we should make it a park. And if there's no homes, there won't be any guns fired at those homes. So I'll leave it there in the interest of not prejudicing anything we may do later. But we need to do something, or we're gonna have a problem. Winterfest is here. We invite all kinds of people to our town, and if they're full of bullet holes, they won't come back. I'll yield my time.
And I'd like to add on to what Andrew has said. I think the onus has been on the wrong people. I think that we need to send the word out to the LLCs that own property in our municipality that we're not going to tolerate this any longer. I have talked with JD's, and he has recommended that sit down and write letters and emails to the fact that I would like to see if something like this happens to an LLC owned property and nothing is done, if there's a second incident involving the same residents, then I think that there should be some type of statute in place or law in place that these LLCs cannot purchase any more property within our community if they're not going to put people that aren't barbarians into their properties. That would be nice if that was a park area, but I prefer single family homes. I want families of all colors and all races to be here and to exist under an umbrella of peace. It seems that we have a problem with other people coming in and causing most of our headaches. Well, we need to figure it out, and we need to figure it out soon before somebody is killed, an innocent bystander or whatever. The time for talk is over and done with. We need to do something within the law, if necessary. If necessary, create new laws that would. I know there's no way that we can guarantee to remove this completely because our world as we know it is no longer existing. It's become an age of a return to barbarism where there is no longer any communication among people to talk things out. And that's part of the problem. So how do we address that? It's multi-level. We need to notify our state representatives that we're no longer gonna tolerate this crap. We need to find out if there are new laws or new statutes that we can implement that would prohibit problematic tenants being placed within our community. Background checks, criminal record checks, whatever's necessary. But I can tell you that the people, especially the poor people that have had to deal with this situation over and over and over again, are fed up and are tired of talking about it. They want something done about it. And that's what we're here to do. And I hope that the rest of the board will join me and our staff to try to figure out ways that we can at least put a stop to it or at least curtail it.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Miller?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Softly and Mr. Franzese for an outstanding job on the budget. When you look at all the work they've done, I know they spent a lot of time doing it, and I know it's very appreciative by our people here on the board. And thank you for doing such a good job as far as that goes. One last comment, I'm going to add just a few words about this. Yeah, I've been on this board 3.5 years, and I've kind of seen a rebirth of Spencer. Spencer at one time was going down, and I can see things, on the upswing. And it's thankful for all the people in this boardroom and a lot of concerned citizens. But unfortunately, one little incident like this can cloud what we've done. So it's just like I said, this is something that needs to be fixed.
I have one more thing I wanted to add, actually two. I know that we talked about the traffic calm on Sowers and Sowers Ferry Road. I was just curious if whether or not you heard from anyone. I know that both Gene and I got the word out. Okay. And two, as we continue to try to bring events into town, one of the things that several people have asked me, within the town that I know of, there aren't any ATMs. I think the only one is at Hendrick. And I was wondering if there was a possibility of putting one here at Town Hall. If not, maybe a portable one for events, so that people that do come over from the Transportation Museum or come here for events, would have that available.
So I've had some conversations with some of our local banks, and I'll follow up on that.
Thank you.
We've been trying to get a local branch with an ATM, but at the very least, having an ATM here in Park Plaza.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I don't know that there needs to be much more said. I think the board has said it all tonight. I will echo once again my appreciation to our staff and all the work that you put in on the budget and all the work that our staff spend having to respond to issues that they really shouldn't have to be responding to like they did today. It angers me, it frustrates me, and it disappoints me that we have a select few in our community, and some from outside our community that choose to come in and degrade all the work that our staff and our board and our citizens and businesses have put in over the last several years to really make a difference. And I agree, it only takes a couple events like that to really affect our image and reputation, and that's something that we've been working very, very hard to restore. What I will say is I'm tired of it. And, we talk about tenants and things like that. The reality of the situation is a lot of these times the tenants have been victims. But what I want us to remember is that oftentimes these victims, these folks have come into our town to do what they do because somehow the folks that have been shot at are involved in stuff that has caused those people to come to town to do that. And so I don't want to lose sight of that. So I think, we do need to find ways to work with within our means here for addressing the situation, whether that's through legal means, through law enforcement means. But I think the other situation is we've got a problem that's not just here in Spencer, it's far beyond Spencer when we have folks coming in like this. And so I think we've got to remember that we're not going to solve it alone, but we've got to work with our neighboring municipalities and law enforcement agencies because we've got a county-wide problem that we've got to tackle. And it's going to take all of us working together to make it happen. So I will leave it at that. We've got our work cut out for us for sure, and I want our staff to know that our board is behind them and that we're here ready to work with you to help solve this problem here. All right, with that, is there a need to go into executive session? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Morgan. I'll give the second to Mr. Muhammad. Is that a second? All in favor? All right, all opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.